Straight Life by Art and Lori Pepper. This is episode 22 of Straight Life. In episodes 20 and 21, Art and others talk about how and why he began using heroin. In episode 22, Art talks about the beginnings of addiction. Here's Art's narrative. After I sniffed it that morning in Chicago, I bought up a whole bunch of heroin, got a sack full of caps. We traveled back to Los Angeles. I guess it took us 3 months to get back, playing all the stops in between. And at this time, we had a little vacation from Stan, about a month before we had to go out again. I told Patty I had sniffed a little bit, but it was okay. It was all right. She felt bad, but she went along with it. Then I ran out. I got totally depressed, and my stomach hurt. My nose hurt something awful. Terrible headaches. My nose started bleeding. I was getting chills. I was vomiting, and the joints in my legs hurt. I had to go to a session, so I got a hold of some codeine pills and some sleeping pills and some bennies, and I got a bottle of cough syrup and drank it, and I went out to this session because I still couldn't believe I was that sick. Everything was real clear to me. Everything was so vivid. I felt that I was seeing life for the first time. Before, the world had been clouded. Now, it was like being in the desert and looking at the sky and seeing the stars after living in the city all your life. That's the way everything looked. Naked, violently naked and exposed. That's the way my body felt, my nerves, my mind. There was no buffer and it was unbearable. I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? I looked around the club and saw this guy there, Blinky, that I knew. He was a short, squat guy with a square face, blue eyes, and he squinted all the time. When he walked, he bounced, and he was always going, moving his head in jerky little motions like he was playing the drums. Sometimes when he walked, he even looked like a drum set. You could see the sock cymbal bouncing up and down and the foot pedal going and the cymbals shaking, and his eyes would be moving. But it wasn't his eyes. It was that his whole body kind of blinked. He'd been a friend of mine for years, and I knew he goofed around occasionally with heroin. So I started talking. I said, "Man, I really feel bad. I started sniffing stuff on the road and I ran out." I described to him a little bit of how I felt, and he said, "Oh, man." I said, "How long is this going to last?" He said, "You'll feel like this for 3 days. It'll get worse, and then the mental part will come on after the physical leaves, and you'll be suffering for over a week. Unbearable agony." I said, "Do you know any place where I can get anything?" He said, "Yeah, but it's a long ways away. We have to go to Compton." We were in Glendale. At that time, they didn't have the freeway system. It was a long drive, but I said, "Let's go." We drove out to Sid's house. As we drove, I thought, God Almighty, this is it. This is what I was afraid of. And the thought of getting some more stuff so I wouldn't feel that way anymore seemed so good to me. I got scared that something would happen before we got there, that we'd have a wreck. So I started driving super cautious. But the more cautious I was, the harder it seemed to be to control the car. The sounds of the car hurt me. I could feel the pain it must be feeling in the grinding of the gears and the wheels turning and the sound of the motor and the brakes. But I drove and we made it and we went inside and I was shaking all over, quivering, thinking how great it would be to get something so I wouldn't feel the way I felt. Sid was a drummer also. Not a very good drummer, but he had a good feeling for time. He was a guy I'd known for a long time, too. A Southern-type cat with a little twang of an accent. We went in and Blinky told Sid I'd started goofing around and Sid said, "Oh boy, join the club." He said, "What do you want?" I said, "I don't know. I just want some so I won't be sick." He said, "Where do you fix at?" I said, "I don't fix. I just sniff it, horn it." He said, "Oh, man, I haven't got enough for that." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "If you want to shoot some, great, but I'm not going to waste it. I don't have that much." I said, "Oh, man, you've got to. This is horrible. You've got to let me have something." He said, "No, I won't do it. It's wasted by sniffing it. It takes twice as much, 3 times as much. If you shoot it, you could take just a little bit and keep straight." I said, "I don't want to shoot it. I know if I shoot it, I'm lost." And he said, "You're lost anyway, man." I begged him and begged him. I couldn't possibly leave that place feeling as sick as I did. I couldn't drive. I couldn't do anything. I didn't care what happened afterwards. I just had to have a taste. Finally, I said, "Okay, I'll shoot it." He said, "Great." They both fixed, and I had to wait. At last, he asked me what I wanted. I asked him how they sold it. He said they sold it in grams. A gram was 10 number 5 caps for $20. I said to give me a gram, and he said, "Whatever you want." I said, "I thought you only had just a little bit." He said, "I only have a little bit, but I got enough." It was just the idea that he wanted me to fix. I knew that, so I'd be in the same misery as he was. He said, "Where do you want to go?" I looked around my arms. I didn't want to go the main line, the vein in the crook inside your arm, because that's where the police always looked, I'd heard, for marks. I asked him if he could hit me in the spot between the elbow and the wrist, the forearm. Sid put a cap or a cap and a half of powder into the spoon. He had an eyedropper with a rubber bulb on it, but he had taken thread and wrapped it around the bulb so it would fit tight around the glass part. He had a dollar bill. Here came the dollar bill again. But this time, instead of rolling it up as a funnel, he tore a teeny strip off the end of it and wrapped it around the small end of the dropper so the spike would fit over it real tight. That was the Jeep. He put around 10 drops of water on top of the powdered stuff in the spoon and took a match and put it under the spoon. I saw the powder start to fade. It cooked up. He took a little bit of cotton that he had and rolled it in a ball and dropped it in the spoon, and then he put the spoon on the table. He took the spike off the end of the dropper and squeezed the bulb, pressed the eyedropper against the cotton and let the bulb loose. When he had all the liquid in the dropper, he put the spike back on the end of it and made sure it was all secure. Blinky tied me up. He took the tie he'd been wearing and wrapped it around my arm just below the elbow. He held it tight and told me to make a fist. I squeezed so the vein stood out. Sid placed the point of the needle against my vein. He tapped it until it went in, and then a little drop of blood came up from the spike into the dropper. And he told Blinky to leave the tie loose and me to quit making a fist, and he squeezed the bulb and the stuff went into my vein. He pulled the spike out and told me to put my finger over the hole because blood had started to drip out. I waited for about a minute or a minute and a half, and then I felt the warmth. A beautiful glow came all over my body, and the stark reality, the nakedness, this brilliance that was so unbearable was buffered, and everything became soft. The bile stopped coming up from my stomach. My muscles and my nerves became warm. I've never felt like that again. I've approached it. I've never felt any better than that ever in my life. I looked at Blinky and at Sid, and I said, "Oh boy, there's nothing like it. This is it. This is the end. It's all over. I'm finished." But I said, "Well, at least I'm going to enjoy the ride." After I left the house, I went to a drugstore that Blinky knew. At that time, you could buy spikes easy, so I got 4 number 26 half-inch hypodermic needles, an eyedropper that had a good strong bulb on it, and went home. I had about 9 capsules of heroin left. I walked into the house, and Patty met me at the door. I went into the kitchen. I put this stuff out on the table, and she looked at it, and she said, "Oh, no." I said, "Yeah, this is it. You'll have to accept it." I got a dollar bill and tore a little piece off the bottom to make a Jeep. I got a glass out of the cupboard, a plastic one, so it wouldn't hurt the end of the needle when I put it in to wash it out. I took a cap and put it in the spoon and put some water in it. And all this time I'm talking to Patty, trying to explain because I loved her and I wanted her to accept this. I got a tie out of the closet and asked her if she would tie me. And she wrapped it and held it, and she was trying to be cool and be brave. And I stuck the thing in and the blood popped up and I told her, leave it go, leave it go. I looked up and I'll never forget the look on her face. She was transfixed by the sight of the blood, my own blood, drawn up, running into an eyedropper that I was going to shoot into my vein. It seemed so depraved to her. How could anybody do anything like that? How could anybody love her and need to do anything like that? She started crying. I took her hand away and took the tie off. I shot the stuff in, and when I finished, I looked at her. She turned her head and cried hysterically. I put my arms around her and tried to tell her that everything was all right, that it was better than the drinking and the misery I'd gone through before, but I couldn't get through to her.